They laughed at the 70-year-old inmate, called him weak, easy prey. But when the gang leader tried to make an example of him, no one laughed again. They say prison breaks a man the day he walks in. But for Ray Jefferson, the moment those iron gates clanged shut behind him, something entirely different happened. He became still. Not afraid, not angry, just still. It was early morning at the Huntsville unit in Texas, the kind of place where the air smells like metal and sweat even before sunrise. The guards moved with routine precision, calling names, shuffling papers, their boots echoing off the concrete. New inmates kept their eyes down, clutching bags of state-issued clothes like lifelines. But Ray stood out. At 70 years old, with silver hair cropped short and a back slightly bent from years of training students in mixed martial arts, he looked like he belonged in a quiet neighborhood, maybe trimming hedges or feeding birds, not walking into a maximum security prison. The guard checking him in, Officer Rudd, gave him a long look. 70? You sure you're in the right place, old man? Ray's eyes met his, steady and calm. I made my choices. Now I'm making peace with them, Rudd smirked. Peace doesn't last long in here. Inside the noise was constant, metal doors slamming, laughter from unseen cells, the occasional shout that cut through the corridors like a blade. Every sound carried a message. You're not free anymore. When Ray stepped into his new block, cell block D, the noise shifted. Conversations dipped for just a moment. Dozens of men, mostly younger, turned to look. A few snickered, others muttered things under their breath. An older inmate was rare enough, but one who didn't look scared. That was something new. A tall man sitting by the wall, tattooed arms crossed, muttered to his friend, "He won't last a week." Ray didn't react. He scanned the place like he was assessing a fight gym. Corners, exits, potential threats. He didn't look nervous, but his breathing was measured, deliberate. Years of conditioning were still with him, hidden beneath the wrinkles and calm exterior. At lunch, he sat alone. The smell of mashed potatoes and boiled beans filled the room. Conversations buzzed in pockets. Across the room, a man with a buzz cut and sharp, cold eyes watched him. Tyler Briggs. Tyler wasn't loud. He didn't need to be. He ran the white gang that dominated Block D. Tattoos covered his neck, and there was always a half smile on his face, one that told you he enjoyed being feared. "Old man looks lost," Tyler said, flicking a piece of cornbread at Ray's table. His crew laughed. Ray didn't look up. He kept eating. One of the younger inmates whispered, "That's Briggs." "You don't ignore him," Ray replied quietly. "Everyone's a somebody until they meet the right reason not to be." The kid blinked, unsure if it was wisdom or madness. After lunch, the guards led Ray to his cell, second floor, middle tier. The air was thick with humidity and the scent of bleach. His new cellmate hadn't arrived yet. Ray set down his bag, folded his uniform, and sat on the lower bunk. He pressed his palms together, eyes closed, and began slow, silent breathing. Outside the cell, inmates passed by, some curious, others amused. "Look at Grandpa Zen," one of them joked, but Ray didn't move. He was thinking about the night that brought him here. One wrong decision, defending someone when he should have walked away. It hadn't been malice that landed him behind bars. It was pride, a lifetime teaching control, undone in a single moment of anger. Still, there was no regret in his posture, just acceptance. By evening, the yard filled with noise again. Tyler Briggs walked the perimeter, laughing with his crew, a cigarette hanging from his lips. He looked up toward Ray's cell. Their eyes met briefly. Tyler smirked. "Old man's gonna make my week interesting," he said to one of his men. Back inside, lights dimmed. The prison quieted to the sound of distant chatter and the occasional clank of metal. Ray lay back on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He wasn't afraid of the men here. What worried him was the violence hiding behind boredom. In this place, fear wasn't what kept you alive. Discipline did. The next morning, as he lined up for roll call, a guard nudged him forward impatiently. "Move it, Grandpa!" the man barked. Ray didn't even blink. He stepped forward calmly, shoulders squared. And from the corner of the yard, Tyler Briggs watched again, studying him like a hawk sizing up prey. Something about the old man's stillness bothered him. Tyler leaned toward his second-in-command. "Let's see how peaceful he stays when I take his breakfast tomorrow." The younger man chuckled, cracking his knuckles. "You sure you want to mess with the elderly, boss?" Tyler smirked. "He won't be elderly when I'm done with him." But Ray wasn't a man who feared threats. He had lived through harder places than this, both in the ring and in life. And though no one in that prison knew it yet, the calm they mistook for weakness was the same calm that had once broken bones and won championships. But the first test was coming fast, and when it did, everyone in cell block D would see the old man very differently. Morning in prison hits differently. The noise, the smell, the routine, everything designed to remind you that you're not in control. But for Ray Jefferson, control was all he had left. By his second day inside the Huntsville unit, the rhythms were already familiar. Wake-up bell at 6, line-up by 6:30, breakfast by 7. No freedom, no privacy, no softness in the voices of the guards. Every movement was dictated by rules, but Ray followed quietly, never complaining, never reacting. He knew something most men didn't. If you wanted to survive here, the fight wasn't with the others. It was with your own instincts. In the cafeteria, he sat at the end of the long steel table again, alone, spooning watery oatmeal while conversations rippled around him. Across the room, Tyler Briggs watched. He had that lazy grin plastered on his face, but his eyes stayed sharp. "Man's got nerve," Tyler said to his right-hand man, Duke Keller, a burly guy with faded knuckle tattoos and a scar running across his eyebrow. "Or he's just senile," Duke replied, chewing on a piece of toast. "Ain't said a word to nobody since he got here." Tyler leaned back. "That's what I don't like. Quiet men think too much. I'll bet you he's hiding something." That afternoon, during yard time, Ray walked laps along the fence line. Not fast, not slow. Steady. The sun was punishing, bouncing off the concrete. Around him, men lifted weights, smoked cigarettes, or watched from the shade. Tyler stood with his crew near the basketball court, pretending not to notice, but every few seconds his gaze flicked toward the old man. Eventually, Duke spoke up. "You really gonna bother him? He looks harmless." Tyler smirked. "That's exactly why. Everyone's watching, Duke. Can't let some grandpa walk around here acting like he owns peace of mind. This ain't church." He dropped the cigarette and stomped it out. "Tomorrow morning. Cafeteria. Let's make an example." Back in the cell block, Ray was returning from laundry duty when a young inmate with nervous energy stepped beside him. "You shouldn't eat alone," the young man said quietly. "Briggs doesn't like it when new guys act different." Ray turned slightly, recognizing him from earlier. "You got a name?" "Dion McCarthy. I'm your new cellmate." "Got moved this morning." Ray gave a small nod. "Then I guess we'll get used to each other." Dion hesitated. "You don't know who Briggs is, do you?" "I know his type," Ray replied calmly. Dion sighed. "He runs this place. At least he thinks he does. He picks targets, guys who won't fight back. That's how he gets respect." Ray looked at him, expression unreadable. "Respect built on fear doesn't last. Not in the long run," Dion frowned. "You talk like a teacher or something," Ray chuckled softly. "Something like that." Later that evening, while the cell block buzzed with noise, Dion couldn't stop glancing toward the upper tier where Briggs and his crew stood, laughing. "They're watching you," he muttered. Ray kept reading the small Bible that had been left in the cell drawer. "Then let them," Dion stared. "You're really not scared?" Ray turned a page. "I've seen fear. This isn't it." Dion shook his head, baffled. He'd seen men twice Ray's size crumble under Briggs's pressure. He couldn't decide if his cellmate was brave or suicidal. The next morning, everything felt tighter. Inmates moved slower. Conversations were short. Word had spread. Briggs was going to check the old man during breakfast. Ray felt the tension but didn't show it. He moved through the line calmly, tray in hand, oatmeal again, hard toast, coffee that tasted like rust. He took his seat at the same end of the table. From across the room, Briggs rose. His boots echoed with each step. He stopped behind Ray's bench, towering over him. "Well, well, look at that posture," Tyler said, tapping Ray's shoulder with his spoon. "You some kind of yoga instructor or what?" A few men laughed, waiting for a reaction. Ray didn't respond. Tyler reached down and grabbed Ray's toast. "Guess you're fasting today." He took a bite, smirking. "Appreciate the meal, Pops." Ray looked up slowly. His tone stayed calm. "You done?" That single question shifted the energy in the room. It wasn't loud, but something in the way he said it made a few inmates go silent. Tyler leaned closer. "You got a problem?" "No," Ray said simply. "You do." Duke stepped forward, ready to intervene, but Tyler lifted a hand. "Nah, let him talk." Ray stood now, posture still upright, eyes locked on Tyler's. "You want to show power? Go lift weights. What you're doing here, that's weakness dressed as control." The cafeteria was quiet enough to hear the fans overhead. Tyler smiled tightly, jaw working. "You talk big for a guy who's about to lose his teeth." Ray didn't move. "You'd have to get close first." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Tyler laughed, a sharp, humorless sound, and backed away. "You got a mouth on you, old man. I'll give you that. Let's see how long it lasts." He tossed the toast back on Ray's tray and walked off. His crew followed, muttering under their breath. Deon, watching from a distance, hurried over after they left. "You crazy, man." "You don't talk to him like that." Ray took a sip of his coffee. "He's just another man, Deon. I've seen tougher ones fall." Deon stared at him like he was looking at a ghost. "You don't get it. He's going to come for you now." Ray wiped his hands on a napkin, stood, and said quietly, "Then he'll find out what coming for me really means." He walked toward the exit, shoulders steady, leaving Deon frozen in disbelief. But Tyler Briggs wasn't one to let things go, and the next encounter would make everyone in that prison choose which man they feared more. The next 2 days dragged by like wet concrete. Every step Ray took, every meal he ate, he could feel eyes following him. In a place where weakness invited pain, silence was often mistaken for fear, and Ray's silence was starting to bother the wrong people. Deon picked up on it first. "They're planning something," he said quietly that night as they sat in their cell. The faint hum of voices and clanking pipes filled the air. Briggs doesn't take embarrassment lightly. Ray was sitting cross-legged on the lower bunk, breathing slow, calm as ever. "Let him plan," he said. "Planning requires thinking. Thinking gives him time to doubt." Deon frowned. "You really think he's going to doubt anything?" Ray opened his eyes, meeting his cellmate's nervous stare. "Everybody doubts, Deon, even the loud ones." Especially the loud ones. Deon shook his head, muttering, "You talk like some movie monk." Ray smiled slightly. "I've been called worse." The next morning, when they walked to the cafeteria, tension hung in the air like smoke. A few inmates were whispering, others kept their distance. Word had spread. Briggs was making his move. Breakfast passed without incident, which almost made things worse. Briggs and his crew stayed at their usual table, laughing, but there was a look in his eyes, patient, waiting. Ray knew that look. He'd seen it in the ring before a fighter strikes. Later in the yard, the setup began. Briggs's men were playing basketball near the fence, while Ray walked his usual laps. The game stopped briefly as he passed, and a ball suddenly rolled near his feet. "Hey, old man," one of them called. "Throw that back." Ray bent down, picked up the ball, and tossed it with a clean, perfect spin straight into the player's hands. A few onlookers whistled, impressed. "Guess you still got it," the player joked. But before Ray could reply, Briggs's voice cut across the yard. "You trying to show off, Grandpa?" The laughter that followed wasn't friendly. Ray simply replied, "Just helping out." Briggs walked closer, dribbling another ball. "You got a lot of confidence for someone who don't belong here." "I belong where I stand," Ray said, his tone even. Tyler circled him like a predator testing prey. "You one of those wise old types, huh? Think you can talk your way out of things?" Ray's voice didn't waver. "Talking only works on people who listen." Tyler smiled. "Then let's talk somewhere quieter." That night, back in the cell, Deon couldn't stop pacing. "They're gonna corner you, man. It's what they do. Laundry room, showers, somewhere guards don't look too close." Ray stretched his hands slowly, the bones in his knuckles popping softly. "Then they picked the wrong corner." Deon stared at him, unsettled. "You don't even seem worried." "I learned a long time ago," Ray said. "Fear's just energy. You can use it, or it uses you." The next day, the first test came. It wasn't a fight. Not yet. It was a message. Ray returned from work duty to find his bunk flipped, clothes tossed on the floor, his Bible torn in half. Deon froze when he saw it. "Oh man, this is bad. Real bad." Ray picked up the pages carefully, stacking them together. His face was calm, but there was a flicker in his eyes, something that had been quiet for years. Deon waited for him to explode, to shout, to do something. But Ray simply set the torn pages on the table and said, "They're impatient." Deon frowned. "You're not going to tell the guards?" Ray shook his head. "Snitching doesn't fix disrespect. It multiplies it." Later, during dinner, one of Briggs's men accidentally spilled soup over Ray's tray. "My bad, Pops," the man said, smirking. Ray just stared at the mess, then looked up slowly. "You have poor balance." The man blinked. "What?" Ray stood, grabbed the tray aside, and calmly placed it back on the counter. He didn't swing, didn't raise his voice, just walked away. Tyler, watching from a few tables over, looked frustrated. He leaned toward Duke. "He's playing a game, trying to look untouchable." Duke shrugged. "Maybe he is." Tyler smirked coldly. "Then we'll touch him where it hurts. Tomorrow. Laundry duty." That night, Ray couldn't sleep. He wasn't afraid of the fight. He was afraid of losing control. Years ago, he'd promised himself he'd never use his training in anger again. The last time he did, it changed everything. But men like Briggs didn't understand boundaries. They only understood consequences. As the lights dimmed, Deon turned to him. "You think they'll really go for you tomorrow?" Ray answered softly. "They'll try. But what happens next? That's up to them." Deon didn't respond. He just stared at the ceiling, realizing for the first time that maybe, just maybe, the old man wasn't the one in danger. Maybe everyone else was. But tomorrow would prove it. And the laundry room wouldn't just clean clothes. It would wash away every doubt anyone ever had about who Ray Jefferson really was. That night, Deon barely slept. Every time the pipes hissed or someone shouted down the corridor, he flinched. He kept replaying the cafeteria, the yard, the looks from Briggs's crew. He knew what came next. Every inmate did. The laundry room was a hunting ground. No cameras, no guards for at least 10 minutes at a time, just machines, steam, and payback. But Ray? He was calm. Lying on his bunk, eyes closed, hands folded on his chest like he was meditating. The rhythmic hum of the ventilation didn't bother him. He wasn't ignoring what was coming. He was preparing for it. Around midnight, Deon finally whispered, "You ever fought in a place like this before?" Ray didn't open his eyes. "Not like this. The ring had rules. This place doesn't." "So you really used to fight?" Deon asked. Ray sat up slowly, his voice low but firm. "I trained fighters. Coached for 25 years. MMA, old school discipline. Taught men how to stay calm when someone's trying to break them." Deon raised an eyebrow. "And you ended up here? Why?" Ray looked at the ceiling for a moment. "Someone attacked my son-in-law in a parking lot." I stopped it. But I went too far. Silence stretched between them. "You mean?" Ray didn't finish the sentence. "Control is a muscle. You stop training it, it fails you." Deon nodded slowly. He was starting to understand the quiet around Ray wasn't weakness. It was recovery. A man patching together a life of discipline after losing it for one brief, irreversible moment. The next morning, the air felt heavier. The guards barked orders, the clang of gates echoed, and every inmate knew when the day smelled like trouble. Dayon tried to talk Ray out of going to laundry duty. "Skip it. Tell them you're sick. Do something." Ray buttoned his jumpsuit calmly. "Running teaches people they can chase you." Dayon threw his hands up. "Man, you're talking like some Yoda-type sensei. This ain't a lesson. This is survival." Ray gave him a look. Not angry, not pitying, just knowing. Survival is the lesson. When Ray entered the laundry room, the heat hit him first. The industrial dryers rumbled, steam rising in thick clouds. The air was heavy with detergent and tension. Briggs's crew was already there, 3 of them pretending to fold sheets, another stacking uniforms. Too calm, too quiet. Dayon had managed to get himself on a different work list, but he was watching from the hallway through the small square window in the metal door. His chest tightened. Tyler Briggs appeared last, carrying a bag of dirty linens over his shoulder. "Morning, Grandpa," he said, letting the bag hit the floor with a wet thud. "Heard you're good with your hands. Let's see what you can do with these." He kicked the bag toward Ray. A wave of laughter followed. Ray didn't react. He started folding one of the uniforms methodically, as if nothing was wrong. That calm only made Tyler angrier. "You really think you're better than me?" Ray didn't look up. "No, but I think you're trying too hard to prove something." That line hit deep. Tyler's grin faded. "What did you say?" Ray finally looked him in the eye. "Men who pick on the weak? They're just trying to remember the last time they didn't feel small." Duke took a step forward. "You got a death wish, old man?" Ray sighed softly. "No, but you might." Tyler snapped. "Hold him." The 3 men moved fast, but Ray moved faster. Years of muscle memory exploded through his body. He sidestepped the first grab, caught the attacker's wrist, and twisted sharply. Clean. Efficient. The man's knees buckled before he hit the ground. The second came swinging wild. Ray ducked low, swept his leg, and the man went down hard, gasping. Duke lunged from behind, but Ray turned with a precision that didn't come from panic. It came from discipline. He shifted his weight, grabbed Duke's collar, and used his momentum against him. Duke crashed into the table, metal clanging like a gunshot. Steam filled the air. The whole room froze. Tyler stood there, jaw tight, breathing hard. His eyes darted between his fallen men and the calm, still figure standing in front of him. Ray didn't advance. He just stood straight, breathing steady. "You don't have to do this, son. Don't call me that," Tyler hissed. "Then act like you're not," Ray said. "Walk away while you still can." For a moment, it looked like Tyler would rush him, but something in Ray's expression stopped him. There was no fear, no gloating, just unshakable certainty. Tyler spat on the floor and stepped back. "You just made the worst mistake of your life." Ray didn't respond. He simply said, "Maybe, but I made it standing up." When the guards finally entered minutes later, the room was eerily calm. 3 men groaning on the floor, Ray quietly folding uniforms again. No one said a word. Back in the cell, Dayon looked at him like he was seeing a myth come alive. "I saw it, man. You dropped them like it was nothing." Ray sat down, rubbing his hands with a towel. "Nothing is ever nothing. It all costs something." Dayon frowned. "What do you mean?" Ray looked at him, tired but composed. "Peace doesn't come free. You have to fight for it. But the trick is knowing when the fight's worth it." But the fallout was just beginning. Word was spreading fast, and in a place like Huntsville, respect and By the next morning, everyone inside Cell Block D had heard what happened in the laundry room. 3 men laid up in the infirmary, one with a broken wrist, one with cracked ribs, and another too humiliated to talk. The story spread fast, and each retelling made Ray Jefferson sound less like a man and more like a ghost that had come to collect old debts. Some inmates started giving him nods of respect when he passed. Others stepped out of his way completely. Even guards looked twice, quietly joking about how an old man had embarrassed one of the most feared gangs in the block. But not everyone found it funny. Tyler Briggs had spent years building a reputation built on fear, one that could crumble overnight if he didn't regain control. And nothing burned more than realizing his new enemy didn't even want to fight him. That evening, while most of the inmates watched TV in the day room, Tyler sat in the corner with his crew. Duke's arm was bandaged, and he was glaring at the floor. The others kept quiet, waiting for their leader to speak. Tyler finally broke the silence. "We're not done." Duke looked up. "Boss, that old man's dangerous. He's not just some fighter. Tyler slammed his hand on the table. "I don't care what he is. You think I'm letting some gray-haired nobody make me look weak? Nah, we handle this our way." One of the younger guys hesitated. "You sure?" "Word is the guards are watching him now." Tyler smirked. "Then we do it where guards don't look. Make it quiet, make it hurt." He leaned back, eyes cold. "You don't beat a man like that with fists. You beat him with fear." That night, Dayon noticed Ray cleaning the floor of their cell, his movements steady and focused. He wanted to say something encouraging, but worry was written all over his face. "Everyone's talking," Dayon said softly. "They say Briggs ain't letting this go." Ray wrung out the mop and replied, "That's his choice." Dayon frowned. "You ever think about asking for a transfer?" "You could request solitary for safety." Ray looked up, half smiling. "I didn't come here to hide." "You don't run from what life puts in front of you. You meet it, deal with it, and walk out better." Dayon sighed. "Yeah, well, around here, walking out ain't always an option." The next day, Ray's work detail changed. He was moved from laundry duty to yard maintenance, something that sounded harmless enough. But he could feel the setup the moment he stepped outside. The air felt charged, too many familiar faces pretending not to look. He picked up a rake and began clearing debris near the fence. Across the yard, Briggs and Duke were working trash detail, pushing carts closer to his area with each pass. Ray kept his back turned, pretending not to notice, but every instinct in him was awake. "Yo, old man," Tyler called. "Missed you in laundry today. You hiding from me now?" Ray didn't respond. He raked another pile of dirt and leaves. That silence made Tyler grin. "I guess you only fight when there's an audience." Ray finally looked up. "Fighting's easy. Control's the hard part," Duke scoffed. "You think you're better than us, huh?" "No," Ray said simply. "But I'm not worse either." That line caught a few ears nearby. Even inmates who had nothing to do with the argument stopped pretending to work. Something about the old man's calmness unsettled them all. It wasn't arrogance, it was mastery. Tyler stepped closer, just within arm's reach. "You think you taught me something in that laundry room?" "You didn't teach me a damn thing." Ray looked at him with quiet pity. "That's because you weren't ready to learn." Duke moved first this time, trying to blindside him with a shove. Ray sidestepped easily, letting Duke stumble past. No punches, no retaliation. The guards shouted from across the yard, "Break it up!" Everyone froze, including Briggs. They knew getting caught meant losing yard privileges for a week, maybe more. Tyler forced a smirk, trying to save face. "You lucky old man. Next time, you're not walking away." Ray lowered his rake. "That's what you said last time." The yard buzzed again as the guards separated them. But behind the smirks and fake laughter, Tyler was seething. Every word, every calm reaction from Ray felt like a direct challenge. He wasn't losing control of the block because of some aged fighter. He was losing it because that man refused to play his game. Later that night, Tyler cornered one of the guards near the laundry hall, a man known to look the other way for a few favors. "We need some privacy tomorrow," he muttered. 5 minutes, maybe 10. The guard hesitated. "You're already on thin ice." Tyler slipped something small into the guard's palm, a folded note with a few commissary credits and a name. "You didn't see me." The guard pocketed it and walked off without a word. Back in his cell, Dayon couldn't stay quiet. "You're really not scared at all, huh?" Ray glanced at him. "Being scared doesn't help you breathe better. I'm just focused." Dayon leaned forward. "So what, you're just waiting for them to try again?" Ray looked at him with quiet certainty. "I'm waiting for them to realize the fight they're picking isn't against me. It's against the part of themselves they keep trying to bury." Dayon blinked, confused but somehow moved. You talk like every punch got a meaning. Ray gave a small smile. It does if you've been hit enough times. The following morning, the tension in the air was almost visible. Inmates whispered as Ray walked to his new assignment, back in the laundry room. But this time, no one was laughing. Everyone knew something was coming, and when it did, the walls of Cell Block D would never forget it. The next morning felt different, too quiet, too controlled. Even the guards seemed to walk slower, glancing toward the laundry room door like they already knew what was about to happen. Word travels fast in prison, especially when it smells like blood. Ray Jefferson walked with his usual calm stride, his hands behind his back, his face unreadable. Dion trailed behind him until the last hallway, whispering urgently, "Ray, listen to me. Don't go in there alone." I heard Briggs made a deal with one of the guards. He's got time bought. Ray stopped just before the metal doors and turned to him. "You can't live your life avoiding storms, son." "Sometimes you walk through them." Dion's voice cracked. "This isn't a storm. It's a setup." Ray gave him a look that silenced the protest. It wasn't arrogance. It was something deeper. Acceptance. He pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was hot and wet, full of thick steam and the mechanical growl of dryers. The air smelled of bleach and burnt fabric. For a moment, it looked empty. Just piles of sheets, metal tables, and a slow-dripping pipe near the ceiling. But Ray knew better. He walked toward the back counter, sorting uniforms with deliberate slowness. Every sense in his body was alert. The steady rhythm of the machines masked footsteps, but he could feel the shifts in air, the faint scrape of rubber soles against tile. Then he heard a low voice from behind one of the dryers. "You came back, old man. Brave or stupid? I can't tell which." Tyler Briggs stepped out first, shirt rolled up to his elbows, a look of cold satisfaction on his face. Two of his crew followed, different men this time, leaner, quicker, meaner looking. The door behind Ray shut with a metallic thud. Ray didn't turn around. "You ever get tired of losing, Tyler?" Tyler smirked. "You ever get tired of talking like a preacher?" Ray kept folding. "You mistake calm for preaching. That's your problem." Tyler stepped closer, his boots squeaking on the damp floor. "You humiliated me. You made my guys look weak." "No," Ray said softly. "You did that yourself." That line sliced through the air. The two younger men tensed. Tyler's smile faded. "Grab him," he said quietly. The first man lunged. Ray sidestepped, his motion fluid and effortless. He caught the attacker's forearm mid-swing, twisted it in one swift movement, and used his weight to guide him down. The man's body hit the floor with a crack. The second man came in swinging, a broken mop handle raised like a bat. Ray ducked under it and countered with a precise strike to the ribs. The sound was sharp, controlled, not wild. The man gasped, the air leaving his lungs all at once. Tyler stood frozen for a second, realizing this wasn't like before. This wasn't just survival. This was training, the kind you couldn't fake. Ray straightened, breathing steady. "You still have time to walk away." Tyler's face twisted. "You think you're teaching me something, old man?" "You think I need your lessons?" Ray's voice dropped low. "Everyone learns eventually. The question is how much pain it takes." Tyler lunged, throwing a wild punch. Ray caught it midair, rotated his hips, and redirected the motion. Tyler's momentum turned against him. He slammed into the table edge, the metal ringing out. But Ray didn't follow up. He stepped back. "Enough!" Tyler staggered up, eyes burning. "You don't tell me when enough!" He grabbed a metal pipe from beside the dryers and swung hard. This time, Ray didn't dodge completely. The pipe grazed his shoulder, knocking him slightly off balance. He gritted his teeth, turned, and grabbed Tyler's wrist again, but slower, more deliberate. He twisted until the pipe dropped. Then he looked straight into Tyler's eyes. "You fight like someone trying to prove he exists. Stop chasing pain to feel alive." Tyler struggled, but couldn't break free. Ray held him steady, not hurting him, just holding him until the fury drained out. The sound of boots echoed from outside. The guards were coming. Someone must have tipped them off. Ray released him gently, letting him stumble back. "It's over," he said. Tyler glared at him, chest heaving. "You think this makes you a hero?" No, Ray replied. It just makes me free. The door burst open. 2 guards entered, shouting. They saw the bruised men, the overturned table, the pipe on the floor. Tyler pointed at Ray. He attacked us! Ray didn't say a word. He just raised his hands and let the guards cuff him. One of the officers, a younger man with a look of disbelief, muttered, You? You did all this? Ray answered quietly. They started something they didn't understand. As they escorted him out, the inmates outside had already gathered, watching through the bars. Dion was among them, gripping the railing. Their eyes met briefly. Dion whispered to himself, He's not fighting to win. He's fighting to teach. When the guards pulled Ray past the block, a strange hush followed. The kind that only comes when a man does something so controlled, so precise, it makes everyone rethink what strength really looks like. Back in the laundry room, Tyler sat on the floor breathing heavily, his pride shattered. One of his men whispered, He didn't even hit you all the way. Tyler didn't answer. For the first time, he wasn't angry. He was confused. But confusion has a way of turning into reflection. And soon, even Tyler Briggs would start wondering if maybe the old man wasn't an enemy at all, but the only person who'd ever told him the truth. For the next 3 days, the prison buzzed with stories about the laundry room fight. Everyone had their version. Some said Ray Jefferson took down 4 men with a single move. Others swore he was a retired special ops soldier. The truth didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that the legend of the old man from D Block had taken on a life of its own. Guards started treating him differently. Not with warmth, no one did that in Huntsville, but with a quiet kind of respect. When Ray passed through security or lined up for meals, the officers stopped barking orders. They didn't rush him. They just watched. To them, he wasn't just another inmate anymore. He was proof that age and violence could coexist in a way they didn't understand. Dion noticed it too. Man, you're like a ghost story now, he said one night, watching Ray patch up the bruise on his shoulder with a damp cloth. Nobody's messing with you. Ray didn't look up. That's not a good thing. Dion frowned. You serious? You earned respect. Ray wrung the cloth out and laid it across the metal sink. Fear and respect look the same from a distance. But one lasts, the other destroys. Dion sat back, shaking his head. You talk like you're not even in the same world as the rest of us. Ray gave a faint smile. I've just lived long enough to know what fights are worth staying in. The next morning, he was back at work duty. No more laundry. This time they had him sweeping the corridors outside the administrative wing. It was quieter there, cleaner. The only sound was the shuffle of shoes and the occasional buzz of the intercom. While he worked, he overheard 2 guards talking by the vending machine. Briggs hasn't said a word since that laundry thing, one said. Won't even talk to his crew. Yeah, well, the other replied. Maybe he's thinking about retirement, too. They laughed, but Ray's expression stayed neutral. He wasn't gloating. He'd seen that kind of silence before. It was the space where rage either burned out or grew stronger. Later that day, when the yard opened, the tension was different. The groups that usually stuck to their own corners were all glancing toward Briggs's table. He sat alone now, elbows on his knees, staring at the concrete. Duke approached him cautiously. You good, boss? Tyler didn't answer. He just kept staring. Finally he said, You ever hit a wall so hard it hits back? Duke looked confused. What? Tyler's jaw tightened. He didn't fight me like the others. He didn't even want to hurt me. That's what messed me up, Duke frowned. You saying you're giving up? Tyler looked up slowly, his eyes dull but focused. No, I'm saying maybe I picked the wrong kind of fight. Duke didn't know what to do with that. He muttered something and walked off, leaving his leader to wrestle with a kind of defeat no punch could explain. Meanwhile, Dion couldn't keep quiet. Every inmate he passed wanted to hear the story from him, and he told it like a preacher. You don't understand, man. He didn't even break a sweat. Old dude just moved, like water or something. Ray heard him one afternoon and called him out on it later. Stop building stories about me, Dion. Dion grinned. Why not? It's true, Ray shook his head. Truth isn't what people hear. It's what they remember. Don't feed myths. They grow into monsters. That night, Ray lay awake on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He wasn't proud of what happened in the laundry room. He didn't regret defending himself, but he knew he'd crossed a line. He had drawn attention in a place where attention could get a man killed. The next day, during count time, a guard stopped by his cell unexpectedly. "Jefferson," the guard said. "Warden wants a word." Ray followed quietly to the administrative office, where Warden Halloran, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes, was waiting behind a cluttered desk. She studied him for a long moment. "I've been doing this job 20 years, she said finally. "And I've seen fights end in blood, but never in silence. You didn't take advantage when you could have. You stopped." "Why?" Ray met her gaze. "Because I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to stop something before it went too far." The warden nodded slowly. "Men like Briggs don't usually stop." "You think he will?" Ray shrugged. "That depends on whether he's more afraid of me. Or himself." She studied him a moment longer, then sighed. "Keep your head down, Jefferson. This place doesn't reward restraint." Ray gave a slight smile. "It never has, ma'am. That's why I'm here." When he was escorted back, inmates watched from behind bars. They didn't know what the warden had said, but they could see it in Ray's eyes. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. Later that evening, Tyler Briggs passed him in the corridor. No insults this time. No smirk. Just a silent stare. For the first time, Tyler didn't see a frail old man. He saw something heavier, something immovable. Ray didn't look away. He simply gave a small nod and kept walking. That nod lingered in Tyler's mind long after. It wasn't a threat. It was a mirror. But in a place built on pride and fear, mirrors can be dangerous, and soon Tyler Briggs would have to face what his reflection had been trying to tell him all along. It was late afternoon when it finally happened. No guards, no crowd, no tension in the air. Just two men sitting at opposite ends of the prison yard, shadows stretching long across the cracked concrete. For the first time since the laundry room incident, Tyler Briggs walked toward Ray Jefferson without his crew. The yard was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that carries weight. A few inmates watched from a distance, pretending not to. Everyone knew this wasn't another fight. It was something else. Tyler stopped a few feet away. "You got a minute?" Ray didn't look up from the small patch of dirt he was raking. "You're already taking it." Tyler gave a small, dry laugh. "Guess I deserve that." He hesitated, shifting from one foot to the other. For a man who'd spent years ruling through intimidation, he suddenly looked unsure. "I don't get you," he said finally. "You don't act like the rest of us. You don't talk like you're scared, but you don't act like you want trouble either. So what's your deal, old man?" Ray set the rake down and leaned against it. "You want honesty?" Tyler nodded. "I'm tired," Ray said simply. "Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. The kind that comes from spending half your life proving something to people who were never watching." Tyler frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Ray looked him dead in the eyes. "It means you're doing the same thing." Tyler laughed once, sharp and bitter. "You think you know me? I've known 100 men like you," Ray said. "Strong, angry, looking for someone to pay for what they can't fix." Tyler's face tightened. "You don't know what I've been through." "Then tell me," Ray said quietly. For a long moment, Tyler didn't answer. Then, almost against his will, the words came. "My old man used to hit me for breathing wrong. Told me fear made men soft. So I learned to hit first. Never stopped." Ray nodded slowly. "And it worked. Until it didn't." Tyler's jaw clenched. "You think I like being this way?" "I think you don't know any other way," Ray replied. "But that's not the same thing." The conversation hung between them, thick with things neither man wanted to admit. Ray studied him carefully, the same way he used to study fighters before a match. He could see the tremor in Tyler's hand, the tension in his shoulders, the way he looked around before answering, as if expecting mockery. Ray said, "You're not afraid of people, Tyler. You're afraid of silence. You're afraid of what happens when no one's scared of you anymore." Tyler's mouth opened, then shut. He looked away, eyes scanning the yard. "You think you're some kind of therapist now?" "No," Ray said calmly. "Just a man who learned too late that fighting the world doesn't make you strong. It makes you lonely. Tyler rubbed the back of his neck. You talk like you never made a mistake in your life. Ray chuckled softly. I made one big enough to cost me everything. That caught Tyler's attention. What did you do? Ray hesitated. The memory still stung. I hurt a man worse than I meant to. I was protecting someone I love, but I stopped thinking. And when you stop thinking, you stop being who you are. Tyler stared at him. That's why you're here. Ray nodded once. You can't undo it. You can only live with what's left. For the first time, Tyler's expression shifted. Something close to understanding flickered across his face. He sat down on the edge of the concrete planter across from Ray, silent for a long while. You really believe people like us can change? He asked finally. I don't believe, Ray said. I know, but only if you want it bad enough to let go of who you've been. Tyler shook his head slowly. That's harder than fighting, Ray smiled faintly. That's why most men never do it. They sat like that for a while, neither talking nor pretending to be enemies anymore. The yard felt different, lighter somehow. Even the guards watching from the tower didn't interrupt. Maybe they knew something important was happening. After a while, Tyler stood. You know, if word gets out I talked to you like this, people are going to think I went soft. Ray shrugged. Let them think what they want. They'll do it anyway. Tyler almost smiled. You really don't care what anyone thinks, do you? Ray looked out across the yard. At my age, you realize half the people judging you don't even know your name. They just need someone to measure themselves against. Tyler exhaled slowly, then said, You talk too much, old man. Ray picked up his rake again. And you listen more than you admit. Tyler started to walk away, but before he reached the door, Ray said, Tyler. He stopped and looked back. Strength isn't about control, Ray said. It's about restraint. You already know how to hit hard. Try learning when not to. Tyler didn't respond, but something in his face changed. Just slightly, enough to tell Ray that the message had landed somewhere deep. When Deon later asked what Briggs wanted, Ray simply said, A conversation. Deon frowned. And that's it? Ray smiled softly. That's always where change begins. But change in a place like Huntsville doesn't go unnoticed, and soon that conversation would ripple through the block in ways neither of them expected. By the end of that week, the entire atmosphere inside Cell Block D had shifted. You could feel it in the way people walked, the way conversations hushed when Ray or Tyler passed by. Something had cracked open in the balance of things. An invisible line between fear and respect had started to blur. Tyler Briggs wasn't barking orders anymore. He wasn't picking fights or posturing in the yard. He'd gone quiet, and quiet from a man like him didn't mean weakness. It meant reflection. Some men heal fast after humiliation. Others take their time realizing it's not humiliation at all. It's clarity. Deon noticed it first. Man, Briggs ain't the same. Dude walks past people like he don't even see them. Ray was sitting on his bunk, rolling his shoulder slowly from the lingering ache. That's what happens when someone finally looks in the mirror and doesn't like what he sees. Deon leaned against the wall. You think he's really changing? Ray folded his towel neatly. Change doesn't happen all at once. It's just small choices stacked up every day. A few days later, in the yard, something unusual happened. 2 younger inmates, part of Tyler's old circle, started hassling a new arrival, a skinny guy barely 20. They knocked his tray from his hands, laughing as his food splattered across the concrete. Usually that was the kind of scene that went unchecked. The guards pretended not to notice. The rest of the block looked away. But this time, Tyler didn't. He was standing near the fence with Duke when it started. He turned, watched for a second, then walked straight toward them. Pick it up, he said flatly. The 2 bullies stopped laughing. What? Pick it up, Tyler repeated, his tone sharp but calm. Then apologize. They hesitated. You serious, Briggs? Since when you care? Tyler's eyes narrowed. Since now. The men exchanged looks, unsure if it was some kind of trap. But Tyler's silence was heavier than any threat. They bent down, picked up the tray, and muttered an apology to the terrified newcomer before walking off. From across the yard, Deon saw the whole thing. He turned to Ray, who was watching quietly. You see that? Ray nodded slowly. I saw it, Deon grinned. That's you. You did that. Ray shook his head. No, he did. He just needed a reason to remember he could. Later that evening, after count, Tyler walked past Ray's cell. He didn't stop, just said, "Told those kids to leave the new guy alone." Ray looked up from his bunk. "I heard." Tyler paused, then added, "Didn't think it'd feel right." Ray smiled faintly. "Doing the right thing usually doesn't feel natural at first. That's how you know it matters." Tyler smirked. "You got a quote for everything, huh? Only the ones that work," Ray said. That was the start of something no one expected. Tyler began helping the younger inmates, small things at first. He'd share workout tips, break up arguments before they got violent, even talk to the guards without cursing. It wasn't about pretending to be someone else. It was about unlearning who he'd been. One afternoon, during yard cleanup, a fight broke out near the basketball court. Two inmates swung at each other while a small crowd cheered. Before the guards could react, Tyler stepped between them. "Enough!" he shouted, grabbing both men by their shirts. "You think you're proving something? You're just making yourselves smaller." The men froze, shocked. The crowd went silent. When Tyler walked away, no one followed him, but they all watched. Deon, who'd been sweeping near the gate, couldn't stop grinning later. "You're turning this place into a school, man. Next thing I know, you'll be teaching classes." Ray laughed softly. "Maybe we already are." Word about Tyler's change reached the guards and even the warden. During inspection, Warden Halloran stopped near Ray's cell. "I've noticed a change," she said. "Not just in you. In others." Ray looked up from his cot. "One conversation can start a lot of noise." The warden studied him for a moment, then said, "Noise isn't bad if it drowns out the violence." That night, Ray sat by the window, staring through the narrow bars. He wasn't thinking about freedom anymore, not the kind that involved gates and fences. He was thinking about peace, the kind you carry inside, even when the world refuses to give it. Deon broke the silence. "You ever think about what you'll do when you get out?" Ray smiled quietly. "I'll probably open a small gym. Teach kids how to fight so they never have to." Deon nodded. "You think Briggs'll come help?" Ray chuckled. "He might. But I think he's already doing that in his own way." The next day proved him right. During lunch, a group of inmates were arguing loudly over a missing radio. Voices were getting sharp, fists clenching. Tyler stepped in again. No weapons, no shouting, just presence. "Stop," he said. "If it's gone, it's gone. Ain't worth the hole you'll dig over it." And just like that, they backed down. It wasn't the kind of power the gangs understood. It was quieter, stronger. Even the guards started noticing. One whispered to another, "You see Briggs lately?" Different man, his partner nodded. "Yeah, Jefferson effect, they're calling it." That night, Deon repeated it, laughing. "The Jefferson effect. You got your own legend now." Ray smiled, but said nothing. Legends fade. Lessons don't. But every calm moment in prison carries an echo. And soon, one final moment would show everyone that what Ray taught wasn't just control. It was redemption in motion. It was the first Sunday in months when the prison felt different. The noise was still there, the clang of gates, the distant shouting. But under it, something quieter had taken root. Respect. Not the kind that came from fear, but the kind that came from understanding. Ray Jefferson was in the chapel that morning, sweeping the floor. The chaplain, an old man named Father Hensley, was setting out hymn books. He'd asked Ray to help ever since the incident in the laundry room. "You keep this place calmer just by being here," the priest said once. Ray had smiled. "Peace is contagious if you stop fighting it." He worked in silence until he heard footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw Tyler Briggs, hands shoved into his pockets, hesitation written all over his face. "Didn't think I'd see you in here," Ray said. Tyler glanced at the cross on the wall. "I didn't come to pray." Ray leaned on his broom. "Then why'd you come?" Tyler's voice dropped. "I wanted to thank you for not—" He stopped, rubbing the back of his neck. "For not breaking me when you could have." Ray studied him for a long second. "Breaking you wouldn't have fixed anything." Tyler nodded slowly. "Yeah, I figured that out. You know, I used to think respect was something you took from people, but it's the only thing that gets smaller when you steal it." Ray smiled faintly. "You learned faster than most." Tyler laughed under his breath. Maybe. But I still got a long way to go. Ray pointed to a bench near the front. Sit down. Tyler hesitated, then sat. The stained glass light hit his face, softening the sharp edges that had once defined him. Ray said quietly, You ever teach anyone before? Tyler frowned. Teach? Nah, I'm not the type you could be, Ray said. The younger guys, they watch you. You've got their attention. What you do next decides whether they learn peace or violence. Tyler leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You really think anyone like me can be a teacher? I think the best teachers are the ones who had to earn their lessons the hard way, Ray said. And you've earned more than most. For the first time, Tyler didn't look away. You're serious, aren't you? I'm always serious about redemption, Ray said. We're all walking proof it's possible. The door creaked open. Dion poked his head in, trying not to interrupt. Hey, Ray. Bible study's starting soon. You coming? In a bit, Ray said. Dion noticed Tyler sitting there and grinned. Didn't expect to see you here, Briggs. Tyler shrugged. Didn't expect to be here either, Dion laughed. Guess miracles happen. Ray gave him a look that said, Go easy, and Dion backed off. All right. I'll see you all in the yard later. When he left, the chapel went quiet again. The light through the windows shifted, painting red and blue streaks across the floor. Tyler said softly, You ever wish you could go back, do things different? Ray exhaled slowly. Sometimes. But then I remember. If I hadn't fallen, I'd never have learned how to stand the right way. Tyler nodded, taking that in. You ever miss fighting? Ray chuckled. Every day, but I found something harder. Forgiving yourself. Tyler's jaw tightened. How'd you do it? Ray leaned back against the pew. By forgiving others first. They sat there for a while, the silence easy now, not heavy like before. When the chapel bell rang, Tyler stood, hesitating at the door. You really think I can change what people think of me? Ray smiled. Start by changing what you think of you. The rest follows. Tyler grinned slightly. You should have been a preacher. I was an instructor, Ray said. Same job. Different gloves. Tyler laughed, shaking his head, then walked out. That afternoon, the yard looked different too. Briggs was talking to the younger inmates, not shouting, actually talking. Ray watched from the bench with Dion beside him. Dion elbowed him lightly. You see that? Briggs out here, giving advice like a coach. Ray nodded. Told you he'd find his way. Dion smirked. You ever realize you're like a walking quote book? Ray laughed softly. Maybe, but if a few of them stick, it's worth it. The sun dipped low behind the fence. For once, the yard wasn't chaos. It was calm. Men lifting weights, talking, even laughing. A few nodded at Ray from across the field. Dion said quietly, You really changed this place. Ray looked around. No, they did. I just reminded them who they could be. As evening fell, the final count was called. Guard seeds herded the inmates back toward their cells. The sound of boots and keys echoed, but the energy was different now. Less anger, more awareness. Back inside, Ray sat on his bunk, the same old Bible resting on his knees. Its torn pages were taped back together, fragile but whole, much like the men around him. Dion spoke from the top bunk. You ever think they'll remember you when you're gone? Ray smiled faintly. Maybe not my name, but maybe a piece of what I tried to teach. He looked at the taped pages one more time and said softly, Strength isn't about how hard you hit. It's about how much peace you can hold when everything around you's falling apart. The lights dimmed. The noise faded. And somewhere down the corridor, Tyler Briggs laughed for the first time in years. A full, genuine laugh. Ray closed his eyes. For the first time since stepping through those prison gates, he felt free. And if you're listening to this story right now, remember, real strength has nothing to do with age or power. It's about what you choose to do with both. So if this story meant something to you, subscribe for more stories like this. Stories about people finding light in the darkest places.